I woke up with my throat burning and the taste of the ocean stuck to every pore of my mouth. The sun was scorching my skin, torn to shreds by the salt. How the hell had I ended up here? Only fragments, the party on the yacht, the laughter that erupted into screams when the sky turned black out of nowhere, Sarah clinging to the railing, and then a complete void. I dragged my feet across that cursed beach, leaning on a rotten stick among the remains of what had been. My shoes? No idea. $5,000 in my account, and at that moment I would have sold half for a simple pair of sneakers. I fell on the sand like a sack of potatoes. Exhaustion was tearing me to pieces. I rested my elbows on my knees, let my head drop, and let the wind tangle my hair. That same hair that Elena always praised before leaving with my supposed best friend. My gaze got lost in the horizon, where the blue of the sky merged with the blue of the sea. What cruel irony, all my life dreaming of escaping. And now, my only wish was to return home. The jungle watched me from afar like a lurking beast. I had no choice. I had to go in. With each step among palm trees, the sand was left behind, and with me, my last piece of civilization. The light danced in the canopy of leaves, just like in my Manhattan apartment when the breeze moved the curtains. I never valued those little flashes. It's ironic. I spent 3 years in therapy for my fear of abandonment, and now I'm living my worst nightmare in flesh and bone. I dragged branches and leaves through the forest, cursing my luck with every step. I was never one for camping. My contact with nature was reduced to a Sunday stroll through Central Park after an $8 coffee. And now, here I am, in this green hell. Every thorn stuck in my arm reminds me how useless I am at this. Sweat mixes with blood and the itching spreads like fire under the skin. But I can't stop. The idea of dying doesn't even cross my mind. Not today. Suddenly, a clearing by the coast opens before me like an unexpected oasis. The salty breeze caresses my neck, bringing a whisper of hope. With trembling hands, those same hands that never sweated at a desk, I begin to sweep the ground. Dry leaves, sand, small pebbles that screech as they're moved. I instantly remember my father in his garage, waiting for me with a wrench in his hand. And I feel a shock of nostalgia and urgency. My nails! 2 days ago they looked perfect, sold to the idea of urban neatness. Now, black with dirt and clotted blood, they are my banner of survival. I improvise a shelter with 2 laughing trunks and vines that hang like sleeping snakes. Trying to make firm knots with fingers trained in soft touches is torture. Each loop comes undone, each knot fails, and forces me to start over. I feel the rough wood against my palms, and in each rub, I learn to tame my frustration. The sun begins to surrender behind the horizon. The sky is dyed an agonizing red that takes time to fade. In the city, the night was just a backdrop. Here, darkness watches me, hungry. A primitive fear oppresses my chest, but I breathe deeply and return to my hands, to the small hut I've just built. When I finally stand up, a torrent of tiredness and pride runs through me, just like the day I submitted my first university project, exhausted, but victorious against all odds. It's not the Hilton, of course, but this structure of branches and leaves will be my lifeline tonight. My stomach growls with a mixture of shame and urgency. The last bite was that stolen canapé before the chaos, and my body now fiercely reclaims it. When I look up, I see them, triskelions of coconuts hanging from that palm tree, glistening with dewdrops. Fresh coconuts? I never tried a natural one. Only the cloying syrup from my hotel pina coladas. And without thinking, I lunge towards them. That's my next mission, a rustic feast, or the promise of keeping myself alive until dawn. I hugged the trunk with all my strength and started to climb. My gym teacher would have died laughing if he had seen me. I was always the last to climb the rope, and there I was, slipping with every movement, discovering that my arms, always trained to grab pens, were now clumsy instruments in the hands of a complete beginner. The bark scraped my legs like tiny blades, adding new scars to my forgotten collection. I felt the sting of the scratch mix with the tension in my muscles, and in an instant, I thought about the jokes we would make at the office. Look at him, the extreme executive. If I ever returned. When my fingers reached the coconut, a surge of triumph ran down my spine. Those same fingers that gently caressed the keys of my grandmother's piano clung desperately, turning, pulling, until with a dry crack, I managed to tear it off. Back on solid ground, I held the coconut like a trophy and smashed it against a rock. The impact sent a jet of crystalline water straight to my face. I drank it as if it were the most expensive wine ever uncorked, fresh, sweet, an oasis in the midst of chaos. The pulp, fibrous and earthy, resisted under my teeth. In another life, I would have discreetly spat it out, but at that moment I savored it, recognizing each fiber as a delicacy that gave me survival. The first night fell with a golden sigh. The sun sank into the ocean, dragging my false security with it. I had never stopped to contemplate a sunset, always busy answering emails, preparing the next report, another meeting. But there, chilled by the sea breeze, I couldn't take my eyes off that spectacle of ignited colors, painting the sky and water with fire. I sat by the small bonfire that I barely managed to light after an hour of frustrated attempts and the vague echo of a survival documentary. The crackling of the dry wood illuminated my sweaty face while darkness devoured everything else. And then, memories came to attack me. The last argument with my father, his deep voice resonating in my head, his eyes reproaching every corner of my life. The message I never answered to my sister, the gray chat bubble floating unanswered, and her treasure of unread words. The disappointment in my ex's gaze when I told her I couldn't go to her grandmother's funeral because I had an important presentation. The fire crackled before me, and its flickering light revealed the deep crack in my chest. The jungle lurked around, but the biggest monsters were the ones I carried inside. I curled up inside my makeshift shelter, piled dry leaves as if they were my lost luxury mattress. I longed for my $2,000 bed with such physical pain that I felt the sheets caress my back with each memory. I closed my eyes, but sleep turned its back on me. Every creak of dead wood sent a dagger of adrenaline to my chest. The whisper of the wind sliding between the branches was a chorus of ghosts demanding my attention. Was this going to be my life now? Jumping at every sound, a slave to fear? Terror settled beside me, until exhaustion, relentless, dragged me into a restless sleep with half-awake nightmares. Day 2. Exploring dawn surprised me with stiff eyelids, breathing broken by dreams of escape. I had slept a sigh, but there was no time for lamentations. I got up, gritted my teeth, and set off. I left my shelter with trembling legs, my mind dulled by lack of rest. Each branch that brushed my face left a tattoo of red scratches and burning itching. Sweat soaked my Ralph Lauren shirt, once a status symbol, now a banner of my misfortune. While the jungle rose around me with the height of vegetable skyscrapers, older and more powerful than any glass tower I had known, I looked up and felt tiny under that epic canopy. The trees formed a green cathedral that reminded me of the aseptic aridity of my office, with its windows overlooking the Sea of Manhattan from the 43rd floor. Here, however, I was the guest, an uninvited passenger to the realm of nature. I saw a hill challenging my endurance, and with trembling hands, I clung to roots that creaked like tendons of a sleeping beast. Every muscle protested. My biceps, accustomed to lifting weights and briefcases, now supported my life. The skin of my palms was tearing, but I didn't stop. Upon reaching the summit, the panorama left me breathless, an infinite carpet of vibrant greens, hidden coves like pirated treasures, and the ocean extending to infinity, my jailer and at the same time my salvation. And then, for the first time since the accident, I let the tears flow. Not those measured and discreet tears that I shed at my mother's funeral, maintaining composure before the world. No, these sobs were raw, bestial, a tearing of the soul that no one would ever hear. I stayed there, hugging the rock, allowing myself to feel every pang of fear and hope, knowing that despite everything, I was still alive, and that my story was just beginning. Something gleamed among the vegetation, and I noticed a cold flash between the leaves. I crouched down, pushed aside branches and damp earth, until my fingers touched something metallic, half buried in the mud. A sign of civilization? Or an older vestige? I shuddered, remembering that Rolex I pulled from the sand in Bali, doubt piercing my heart. Return it, or keep it. I chose honesty, but even today I wonder if that choice served me any purpose. Suddenly, a shiver ran down my back, like when you cross the threshold of your home and notice someone has been snooping through your things. The wind stopped. The murmurs of the jungle drowned in silence. I turned my head, following a slight crunch in the dense undergrowth. Paranoia, or an intruder lurking. I remembered my grandfather's stories about ghosts that prowl lost men. I didn't wait to find out. I hurled myself down the hillside as if possessed, my breath a broken gasp, my heart hammering in my ears. I ran uncontrollably, remembering my urban fears when crossing dark alleys after an endless day at the office. Contemplating the stars. That night, I fled to the beach to escape the vegetal cage. The sky welcomed me in sacred silence, thousands, millions of stars twinkling over the dark expanse of the sea. I recalled the Atacama Desert when Jessica pointed out Orion and the Big Dipper, while I, idiot, remained glued to my mobile screen. I tried to recite their names in a low voice, fragments of useless science that were now my only bridge to the world I left behind. I wondered if anyone in some other home was looking up at this same starry blanket and thinking of me. Or had they already turned the page, like with Michael from accounting after his accident last year, a month of "we miss you" messages, and then the deepest oblivion. Under that immense firmament, I felt tiny, but for the first time in days, slightly at peace. I returned to my refuge with slow steps, as if dragging each of my thoughts on my back. The fire, barely an orange blink, bathed my pathetic temporary home with trembling shadows. I lay on my side, using my own shirt as an improvised pillow. I felt the rough fabric against my cheek while watching the flames dance through the cracks of my shelter. Sleep finally came, but it wasn't an escape. It was a parade of familiar faces. My mother with compassionate eyes, my ex looking at me harshly, my boss evaluating me with a furrowed brow. All of them observed me with that lethal mixture of pity and disappointment that I had feared all my life. Day 3. Fishing. I opened my eyes before dawn, awakened by the echo of a dream. I was sitting in my favorite Manhattan restaurant, about to sink my fork into a juicy steak, when everything crumbled into fine sand. Light barely filtered through the leaves, a pale gray announcing that I had survived another night. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. I went out barefoot, feeling the cold sand between my toes. My feet, once soft and pampered, were now calloused and toughened by each kilometer traveled. I took the spear I carved yesterday, a sharpened splinter of wood, the fruit of my desperation and determination. I had never fished in my life. My father tried once. I preferred video games and illuminated screens. At that moment, I would have given everything to have paid attention to him. I approached a rocky outcrop where the water, calm, formed small, natural pools. As a child, I was terrified of these backwaters. I imagined hidden marine creatures that would drag me to the bottom. How silly that fear seemed now, compared to the real terror of starving to death. I remained motionless, with the same concentration as someone about to close $1 million deal. The fish, tiny and nervous, navigated under the crystalline water, their scales reflecting the dawn light. They reminded me of the ones I had in my apartment, Clara feeding them while I traveled. Would they still be alive? Or would they have died, just as many believed I had died? I held my breath, raised the spear carefully, and plunged it with a dry movement. The fish tried to escape, its fins beating the water like a desperate moan. I lifted it out, its last convulsions drawing ripples in the water. The smell of salt and blood burst in my nostrils. I gritted my teeth upon hearing the crack of the broken spine. I had never before killed something so large. A spider was my biggest prey, and I always felt a twinge of remorse. But at that moment, I felt something else. A confusing mixture of guilt and a primitive pride. He, my sustenance. I, his executioner. And in some twisted way, both survivors. I returned walking along the shore, with my modest trophy hanging from my arm. The sea, so calm that it seemed to mock me, its waves brushing the sand like muffled giggles. I remembered the luxury sushi dinners, paying a fortune for those small works of art, and discarding without blinking the pieces I didn't like. Life has a more twisted sense of humor than any horror movie screenwriter. As I approached the camp, a sensation similar to an urban chill bristled on the back of my neck. Like that time on the subway when a pair of unknown eyes followed me to my car, and upon turning around, a complete stranger scrutinized me fiercely. I wasn't alone. I stopped, holding my breath, scanning the line of trees behind my shelter. The wind shook the leaves, but there was a different murmur, a strange pulse beating among the shadows. With trembling hands, I placed the spear and the fish near the fire site. Paranoia, my old companion from those endless nights in clubs, returned to me like an icy dagger. Suddenly, a slight creak. It wasn't the wind, nor the fluttering of a night bird. It was a deliberate, precise, human movement. My heart raced like when the plane sinks in severe turbulence. I stood still, wondering if my eyes were deceiving me or if my mind was playing another of its tricks. It wouldn't be the first time. In Tokyo, with my crisis of the 30s, I was convinced that someone was following me day and night. But this time, tension took over my body like a ruthless beast. And there, among the dark undergrowth, I knew I would have to face something or someone that didn't appear in any survival manual.